So who made a New Year's resolution this year? Okay? All right? Not many hands went up, right? But typically, they don't go up because we're embarrassed to admit that we made a resolution and we're not successful with it any longer, or we're not pursuing it anymore. Now, what kind of resolutions did you make? All right? Just kind of throw them out there. Those of you who casually raised your hand trying to hide the fact, what kind of resolutions did you make? Garrett?
Walk 30 minutes a day.
There we go. A fitness goal. All right? Anybody else? You're back there shaking your head. What does that mean, Brian?
Well, it's the same as this. Take work-life balance. So take that afternoon, and no matter the weather, and take the dogs for a walk.
Okay. All right. See, he didn't realize sitting in the back of the room meant he was going to get out of me being able to see him. All right. These are a lot of the typical ones. Jeffrey?
I was just going to say, does it have to be New Year's?
Nope.
I didn't really make mine on New Year's. I make my goals on my birthday. But mine was to eat cleaner and more protein.
Okay. To eat cleaner and more protein. Okay. We could go there, but...
Bring it.
So I want to share a few little facts that I discovered. First of all, not only is Matt a great salesperson, all right, but I'm pretty sure he got at least a minor, if not the full major, and maybe even did some graduate study in Babylonian history, all right? The Babylonians were the first that really started doing New Year's resolutions, all right? Now, the interesting thing is, they didn't do them in January. They did them in mid-March. Right there. Matt knew that it started in March. Let's bring it home. Let's bring it back. All right? So we went to mid-March. Now, here's the other thing that I figured out about Matt. The Babylonians did it in March because it was when their first harvest of barley happened. And we all know what's made out of barley. All right? Yeah, all right. We got your number, Matt. Actually, statistically, only 39% of the U.S. adults will even admit that they set a New Year's resolution, though they believe it's actually twice that amount. Now, 59% of young adults, and they're 18 to 34, they will set a New Year's resolution, all right? The rest of us who are not in that age group, and let's just say we're north of 50, all right, we don't bother to set them, all right? We're just happy to wake up the next morning, all right? Now, the top 3 are all health related. They're to exercise more, all right, to eat better, all right, to lose weight. Those are the 3 top ones. Now, whether you knew it or not, the second Friday in January, which happened to be the 13th of January, not even a full 2 weeks, is deemed Quitter's Day. All right? Nearly 80% have given up on their fitness goals, and that is from the Strava Fitness tracking app that has over 1 million participants, all right? That 80% of those people who had set a goal January 1 had quit by January the 13th this year. And of course, that was 1 month before the CEO for Strava quit also. But, you know, who knew? Who knew? Here's the other statistic. According to GQ magazine, 64%, almost 2/3 of those who have made a New Year's resolution will have abandoned all of their resolutions before February the 1st. Now, here's the one. Only 9% successfully keep a New Year's resolution. All right? That doesn't say much statistically for what we're trying to accomplish or what we're getting done here. Now, being the modern man, I went to Google. All right? And I asked Google, why do people give up on their New Year's resolutions? Google gave me 1,110,000,000 articles on why people give them up. Now, I was really concerned about having overworked Google. But it was able to find that many in less than half of a second. 0.52 seconds, it found more than 1 billion articles telling us why people give up. Well, I just wanted to do some light reading. I'm not Chris Turney. So I only looked at the most recent 10 million articles. And what I discovered was that most commonly, these were the top 5 that they referred to. Having too many goals at one time. We're so aggressive and overachieving, we're going to change our life, and we're going to change all of our life in every way possible. But then we don't have a step-to-step plan to achieve that. And let's say they were a little unrealistic. You know, we're going to lose 40 pounds by the end of the week. Okay, you lose a limb and we still might not reach it, all right? We have no ability, or we have the inability to actually see what the obstacles are that are over the horizon. Now, I do a lot of goal training and goal coaching, and I always use 2020 as the classic example of us not being able to see things that are over the horizon. In 2019, we're all putting goals together, and I'm coaching all these people up to how to get their goals together, and not one of us thought about having a pandemic and what might happen if we have a pandemic and have to stay home for a while. And God forbid, our business is non-essential, all right? So there are things that we cannot foresee and see what those obstacles are. And, you know, we're doing all these things. The stress of having one more demand put upon ourselves, it just causes us to lay down and quit, all right? Well, I want to suggest that it really comes down to 3 things, and they fall into what I refer to as the Sandler success triangle. It's your behaviors, it's your attitude, and it's the techniques that you're going to look at. And so what I'm going to propose is we're going to talk about those 3 things today and see how we can work on that. Now, the success triangle, and this is a quote from David Sandler, is success is the result of connecting your behaviors, attitudes, and techniques. See, David Sandler realized that oftentimes when we go into working on ourselves, or we hire coaches, or we hire trainers, there's a focus on one thing. We talk about techniques, we talk about behavior, we talk about attitude, and 90% of the time we go back to the technique. But the reality is we have to have a conversation about all 3 in equal portions. It's not all about doing the right technique. It's not all about doing the right behavior, nor is it all about the right attitude. And actually, they're interconnected. Most people will say, well, you put that attitude at the top because attitude dictates everything. Really? Well, have you ever had an instance where you actually executed on a behavior that you had said, I'm going to get done? And at the end of it, even if you weren't very good at it, didn't you still feel better because you accomplished something? Even if it was to make 10 more phone calls today. Didn't you feel better? There's a classic example of behavior actually affecting the attitude. Now, the behavior triangle, this is how we break it down with Sandler. The behavior, you've got your goals at the top, you've got your plan there on the left-hand side, and you've got your action on the right-hand side. Now, those of you who have been around the chamber for a while, you've heard me talk about setting goals, all right? You've heard me talk about how do we build the plan? Once we know what the goal is, how do we build the plan in order to achieve it? And Many of you may even have the paper still in your files or in the bottom of your drawer someplace about how to build those smarter goals and everything. All right? But what I want to suggest to you, I don't think this thing has the pointer on it, that it all lies in this triangle, in our actions. First of all, do we identify specifically what it is? If we do we know when we're doing it? All right? The behavior is having a systematic approach to the task that's at hand. All right? We've talked about the goals, we've talked about building the plan, but it comes down to identifying those specific activities. The things that you know or that you believe are going to enable you to make the action happen. What is it that you will do? Using the example earlier, if it's making more phone calls, how will you make more phone calls? Will you devote more time to it? Will you get a different list? How will you do that? If it's to lose weight, how will you do that? Garrett said he was going to walk 30 minutes. He was very specific about the action that he planned to take. We have to know what it is that we're supposed to do in order to execute on it. And the last thing there, that cookbook that's up there, isn't it interesting to believe, or that we recognize, that a cookbook has what in it? Recipes. And they are directions for baking a cake or making chicken marsala or whatever it is. But it's very specific about the ingredients. It's very specific about how to put the ingredients together in a sequence and even in the amounts. And then how long do you bake it, cook it, barbecue it, roast it? It's all very specific, that if you want that cake to come out of the oven, if you follow those directions in the cookbook, it will happen. And that's why we call it the cookbook. If you follow your cookbook, if you executed on the action that you identified, success is inevitable. But we don't take the actions. We let those get in our way. And then when we look at the attitude triangle is controlled by you. The interesting thing is, too many times, I hear people say, well, my attitude would be better if it wasn't for this. Who's in charge of this? Well, it's those darn kids. Yeah, but who chooses the attitude? And it breaks down to the you part of that. 3 components of you is mind, body, and spirit. We are responsible for our own mind, body, and spirit. Now, I can do a long lecture. Some of you have actually sat through them before about all of that. But suffice it to say that we have to own the you component and decide how we are going to change you. Because above all, if we're going to make change, we have to change something, right? Because the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expect a different outcome, okay? So how are we going to change our mind, our body, and our spirit? In other words, how are we going to change you? More specifically, the attitude is how you feel about yourself. It's an inside-out perspective, all right? Not an outside-in. There's the piece that we have to own. Outside, we can let it affect our attitude, but that's our choice. Inside, we can determine our attitude, and that's our choice. The interesting thing is your mindset has 2 things that it's dealing with, and both of them are wrapped around your comfort zone. How do you handle success, and do you fear failure? The reality is, many times we are successful at doing something. We have just set a record doing this month. We have never done that before. And then the next 3 months, we're struggling just to come back to a lower standard or lower expectation. Why? Because that was outside of our comfort zone. Have you ever heard, and I'm picking on salesmen right here, have you ever heard a salesman in the first week, hey, I closed a big deal, man. I am ahead of my goal for the quarter. And it's just the second week of January. Man, I'm on cruise control now. I'm just going to build my numbers. And then they get to the end of the quarter and they are just exactly where they were. Because guess what? Unintentionally, the mindset was, I'm coasting. Unintentionally, they actually sabotaged their success because they didn't continue doing the things that got that success. And here's the other piece to that. We didn't feel like we deserved it because it just accidentally happened. In a time long ago and far away, I sold boats. One 4th of July weekend, I sold 400 express cruisers. And I'm standing here in front of you and I'm telling you, that weekend, it was simply because I was in the right place at the right time. One of them literally was because I was standing on the dock, saw another guy that wasn't doing anything, and I just stepped in front of him and said, throw me your line. And I got a sale. Now, to say that a 400 express cruiser, a Sea Ray 400 express cruiser, that was a nice paycheck. When you get a 5-figure paycheck for 1 month, you feel really good. But everything that I did that weekend wasn't why I sold 4 units that weekend. It was the things that I had done in the past that had built up to it. But we don't connect the dots. We allow our attitude to believe it came to us. We were lucky. The only way you get lucky is by being good. And the luckier you are, the better you are. Because you are doing things to drive that luck. You are doing things to be in the right place at the right time. You are doing things that are putting you in the right spot. So it isn't just about luck. And then the other side of that, and it goes right back to the whole conversation that we're having about resolutions, that fear of failure. If I could have every one of you raise your right hand and say, from this day forward, I will never fear failure again, I would do it. Because failure is not a 4-letter word, right? And it's a good thing. The sooner we fail, the faster we fail, the sooner we take away a lesson, the sooner we learn what the right way to do it is. And we eliminate the wrong ways. Thomas Edison, 2,000 light bulbs. 1,999 of them didn't work. It was the 2,000th bulb that actually worked. Is he a failure because he did it wrong 1,999 times? Absolutely not. Not in my book. He kept going. He realized, hey, there's the problem with that one, and he moved on to the next one. He changed, he adapted, and he got to that 2001. He stayed with it because he was willing to stay outside of his comfort zone. That dealing with success and that fear of failure is all about your comfort zone. If you aren't comfortable being uncomfortable, what do? You stay comfortable, right? And we can simply say, it's not your fault, okay? We all have that little piece of Cro-Magnon DNA in our heads. And that little piece of Cro-Magnon DNA that still tells us that if we change things, well, the rest of the tribe is not going to like us because now we're being different. We're not conforming. We're not fitting in. And if we get our tail feathers kicked out of the tribe, there's a saber-toothed tiger out there waiting to eat us. We don't want to be eaten by the saber-toothed tiger, so we don't change. The other reality is it's just simply human nature. We don't like change. It makes us uncomfortable. And what we really need to be is comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's only when we're uncomfortable, when we're outside of that comfort zone, that we're growing, that we're expanding, that we're finding where the new limits really are. And it's whether it's your little toe, it's your left foot, or it's your whole body. We have to get outside the comfort zone in order to make the improvements and to make the changes we're looking for. And it's all about changing your outlook. It begins up there at the top. What we believe is going to affect our judgment. Our judgments will dictate what actions we are willing to take. And then the actions are going to have the results, or going to lead to the results. And those results are going to simply reinforce our beliefs. So if we believe that making a cold call is a waste of time, we're going to judge the fact that if we're spending time making cold calls, we're wasting our time. Well, my boss told me I had to make them, so yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll dial the phone. See, nobody's there, and hung up on me. They yelled at me. They didn't like me. Yep, look at my results. They're pretty abysmal. I told you it wasn't going to be worthwhile to make cold calls. Now, what if we decided to make those cold calls and we believed that we were simply going to have an opportunity to meet somebody new? Well, our judgment would be then, hey, we're going to meet some new people. Let's go ahead and dial. Well, you know what? We could do actually 12. We don't have to do just 10 today. The actions that we take are going to be a lot more enthusiastic. When we answer the phone or we begin talking on the phone, we're going to have a different tone in our voice. And guess what? The tone in our voice is going to be perceived on the other end. Hey, I want to get to know who this person is. This cat's making phone calls to strangers and is having fun at it. Why? I want to know who that is. The results are going to mean we are setting appointments. What if we changed our outlook? And then lastly is the technique triangle. Now again, this one is clearly set up for the Sandler world, all right? And technique is your personal presence, it's your tactics and your strategies. And these are specific tactics and strategies from the Sandler world, but let's think about that into your context, all right? Techniques are the strategies, tactics, and personal presence you use to implement your behavior plan. All right? So what are the talk tracks that you have in your head? How do you talk to you? Guys, I got to admit, I've always admitted to being my harshest critic, but I've got that voice in me that is just flat out evil, all right? That just gets after me at every opportunity, that I have to purposefully shut down. I have to consciously know that my presence is being affected if I'm following my own talk track. So I have to change my talk track. Knowing where to start, the strategy and the tactic, and then just getting it done. Put one foot in front of the other and keep moving. Move forward, get it done. But here's the other thing. We have to understand when to change. There is none of us that are in business that are doing business the way we did it 2 years ago, the way we did it 5 years ago. Heck, some of us aren't doing it the same way we did it 30 minutes ago. Our lives, not just business lives, but our lives are fluid. We have to know that change is inevitable. We can resist it, and between the rock and the water, who always wins? The water. And it chooses the path of least resistance, but it just wears the rock out because it's persistent. So we have to understand that we are going to change, that we can't say, well, this is my way, so do it. All right? And again, in another lifetime, many moons ago, I remember standing up in a room full of young athletes, all right, at the college level, and saying, gentlemen, just so we're clear, I'm the head coach, you're the player. It's my way or the highway. There is no way I could get away with even saying that in front of a group of athletes today, let alone high caliber college athletes. All right? Change is going to happen. We have to learn how to adapt, improvise, and overcome. All right? And I had the lesson taught to me when I was teaching at Fort Leavenworth. The Army guys told me that the best battle plan is perfect until first contact with the enemy. And from that point forward, you had to improvise, overcome, and adapt what you were going to be doing because they were. And you had based your plan on past knowledge, and now you're getting up-to-date information live. You better learn from it. All right, let's hope this works, guys. So how do you improve your batting average?
You know what the difference between hitting 250 and 300 is? It's 25 hits. 25 hits and 500 at-bats is 50 points, okay? There's 6 months in a season, that's about 25 weeks. That means if you get just one extra flare a week, just one, a gork, you get a ground ball, you get a ground ball with eyes, you get a dying quail, just one more dying quail a week, and you're in Yankee Stadium.
And thus, this is the title. One more hit per week raises you from the average hitter in baseball of 250 to a Hall of Famer at 300. One more hit per week. And the reality is, statistics bear me out on this, the players who hit home runs, they see more pitches, they go deeper into the count. That's why they see more pitches. Instead of the average of 4 pitches per batter, they are 7 to 8 pitches. So they see more pitches. They strike out more, but they also walk more. They're swinging the bat. They are battling, and they're fouling it off. They're hitting it deep, and it goes out of bounds. But they get to swing again. They get another turn. They get to keep going. They see more pitches, they take more swings, and they put the ball in play. So, how do we improve your batting average? Take some action. If it's just walking around the desk, if it's just walking around your house, if it's just walking around the block, take the action. If your goal was to improve your fitness, it has to start somewhere, and it starts with the first step. So we have to take the action. Know you're going to change your attitude for a couple different reasons. It's okay to fail. In matter of fact, I encourage it. It's okay to fail. But also, you're not a failure. You're just learning lessons. Line up and do it again. Learn to adapt your tactics and your strategies. And whether I'm talking about at work, which is an easy match, or whether we're talking about working with our kids. All right? Sometimes you have to learn to change your tactics because they figure you out. All right? Just about the time I figured out how I was doing it, they figured out what I was doing, and I had to adapt. All right? Didn't always get it right, but you know what? I kept working at it. Here's the key. Do more, do better, do different. We can always do one more, you fill in the blank. One more call, one more appointment, one more meeting, one more email, one more rep, one more lap. And eventually it'll then be one more mile, one more marathon. But do more. Do better. We can always evaluate what we do and improve on it, even when we're the best. Whether you love him or hate him, doesn't matter because it doesn't factor into the argument or the discussion. Tom Brady just retired at 44 years old? And arguably still in the top 10 NFL quarterbacks. And I don't like him necessarily as a person, but as a player, I would have loved to have been on his team, or I would have loved to have been his coach, because what made him so great, the GOAT, is because he understood that at the end of every season, and this is a guy with 7 Super Bowl wins. And I don't even remember how many MVP awards. He knew he could get better. And he hired 4 coaches every year at the end of the season that were not a part of the New England Patriots or were not a part of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They looked at his nutrition, they looked at his fitness, they looked at his footwork, and they looked at his arm. And he changed every year. He made an improvement. Now, how do you have somebody who has won 7 Super Bowls and at the end of that season goes out at the local high school and says, "Coach, help me with my footwork. Help me with my reads." I mean, I get chills just thinking about that concept of what he accomplished, and yet he understood he could get better. The greatest of all time, and he knew every year, and he made it his mission every year to improve. How many of us attack whatever it is that we want to improve on in that manner? That we can always get better and do things differently. You know, sometimes we just simply have to say, you know what, how I've been doing it, even though it's been successful and it's gotten me to this point, I still need to learn to do it differently. And that's one of the biggest challenges because we're successful. Every one of us in this room is very successful at what you do. And yet, tomorrow, next week, next month, we need to change. We need to do things differently. We need to be able to evaluate that, accept it, and make the changes. And how are we going to do that? We can do more every day. We can focus on what needs to be done better on a weekly basis. And on that monthly 60 and 90 days, we can evaluate what changes need to be made so that we can do things differently. You can't do things differently on a daily basis because that creates inconsistency. But we can do more on a daily basis. Because if I did 10 today, I can do 11 tomorrow. And the next day, 12 of whatever that is. And I can do better on a weekly basis. Yeah, I can probably do better on a daily basis, but I'm not going to see that much of a difference. But on a weekly basis, I can absolutely do better. And I'll be able to recognize, evaluate, and make adjustments on the monthly 60 and 90-day basis to determine what's different. What am I adjusting to? And what kind of adjustments am I making? And here's the hard part. Be consistent. Do it every day. Do it every week. Do it every month. And when it doesn't work, then be persistent. Keep doing it. Line up and do it again. Even when it hurts, do it again. Do it another one. Even when you feel like one more call is outside of your limit, do one more call. Be persistent. But here's the most important part, the very last one. Give yourself grace. You know what? At the end of each day, that's the end of that day. You cannot do anything about what went on in the past, but learn from it. You can't change it. Put it behind you, and the next morning you get to start all over again. It's a new day. And here's a little concept that I'm going to throw in real quickly here. It's called IR theory. We have to learn what the difference between I and R are. I is your identity, R is your roles. We all play roles. The roles are the things that we screw up. The roles are the things that we don't do well. The roles are the things that we need to work on. Our identity, on a scale of 1 to 10, you are a 10. And any moment that you believe you're less than that, come talk to me. Because you are an I-10. You were born an I-10, you will die an I-10. Doesn't mean you're perfect, but it means you, being you, is good enough. But when we start clouding the line between what our identity is and what our role is, we then start having people feel as if they're inadequate. They're not good enough. They can't live up to it. Because they weren't the best mother, because they weren't the best father, because they weren't the best spouse, or the best salesperson, or the best manager that day. That day. Somebody hung up on you on the phone. They didn't hang up on you. They don't know you. They hung up on the role they perceived you to be playing. They perceived you to be a bill collector. They perceived you to be a salesperson. They perceived you to be somebody they didn't want to talk to. But they don't know you. They didn't hang up on you. They hung up on your role. So give yourself grace and understand that at the end of each day, it's over. We get to start all over the next day. And that's the exciting part. Because the next day, we can still strive to improve where we're at as long as our comfort zone, we're willing to get outside of it. So there it all is together. We work on all of those things. It looks like a lot. But it's your attitude, it's your behaviors, your attitude, and your techniques. That's our batting. That's how we improve our batting average. Take more swings. Get bat off your shoulders. Put the ball in play. You're going to strike out, but you're also going to get a lot of walks, and you're also going to hit more home runs. Thank you.
Questions for Jeff?
Yes, sir. We already talked about that one.
Your point is awesome in that you can always do one more, and you can push yourself every day. At what point does that turn into too much? Does it turn into burnout? How do you hold yourself in check strategically to make sure that you're not giving up too much over here to do one more? Does that question make sense?
It does make sense in the sense that what you're striving for is the balance. If I focus too much on the technique, I'm going to be ignoring my attitude and my behavior. If I focus too much on my attitude, I'll be ignoring them. Likewise, if I'm focusing too much on the job, what am I saying no to? What am I sacrificing at home? Okay? You and I have had the conversation. You know that I've been there. There comes a point in time that you have to say enough. I cannot do more. Not because physically we are unable to dial the phone one more time, but practically we have to be balanced. Okay? I do an exercise when I'm doing the big goal thing, the synergy wheel, and it talks about the 8 spokes of our life and the things that we do. All right? Some of you have even done that exercise with me. Invariably, when we do that, we rate ourselves on those spokes, we recognize that we're out of balance. We recognize that our wheel isn't a wheel at all, that it's very rocky. And so we have to learn to build that balance. So to your point, Chris, we have to understand that, you know what, we have to be able to say yes to some of those other things that are of equal importance, and we have to determine what that is.
So within the boundary then of that job, push to the outer limits of that boundary.
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And I would suggest at home, push to the outer limits there too. So, great question. Any other?
Yeah. My industry, there's a call every morning. It's free. I get on there. It's very motivational. Of course, they use the most successful examples, you know. But the one thing you always say is progress, not perfection. So you don't have to be perfect. Just make some progress. It'll come to you.
Mark, I love that because, you know, most of you know that I coach out at Lee Summit West. And my comment to the players is every day get 1% better. And that's 1% for you. That's not comparing to anybody else. That's not saying, where am I in that, you know, to that person or to that team. It's you. You get 1% better of you every day. In a week, that's 5%. In a month, it's 30%. Okay, and you math majors, stop it, Chris. All right, you're adding it up. You're seeing where I'm going with that. That every day, if we continue to get 1% better, how much are we going to improve over a short period of time, let alone over an extended period of time? And that's really where this missing out on our resolutions or giving up on our resolutions, it's because we took too big of a vision. We should have a long-range goal, but what are we doing today, this week, and this month? What are you going to do tomorrow that's going to be different, that's going to be more, and is going to be better than it was today? Beth? Your hand went up first.
Do you feel like, I'm reading at my notes, how to change it, talk tracks, do you feel like today's society definitely has more distractions with social media and all this, that we feel like we have so many things coming at us? And I know it's our choice, but I feel like that is very hard to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we think about what our kids have to go through growing up with the cell phone there, I mean, you see anything happening, and what is the first thing that you notice?
I know.
There's people right here doing this, all right, getting every bit of it videotaped, and it's going to become somebody's meme, or it's going to hit the internet, or Twitter, or TikTok, or Instagram, or wherever it is, all right? And yeah, there's a lot more distraction, which means we have to focus on focus. You know, a lot more. Yeah. Jeffrey.
You had the 3 things. You had behavior, attitude, and technique.
Yes, sir.
And you're wanting to take steps. Which one do you start with?
Yes. Where do you...
Does Sandler hold a higher spot on any one of the parts? I mean, start with attitude first and work towards behavior, or start with behavior first, or?
In this discussion, Sandler becomes irrelevant, and it's Jeffrey. What does Jeffrey feel he needs to focus on first? And Jeffrey has to be honest with himself, and it's between Jeffrey and himself. Or you can rely on Megan to tell you.
She knows.
I'll call you out.
Done. Works all day.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right.